The Soul Sovereignty podcast is a deep dive into the core wounds and deeply embedded subconscious beliefs that reside within the collective psyche so that you can reclaim your sovereignty and embody your power to experience freedom in your relationships. It is hosted by Jessica Falcon, International Soul Embodiment Guide and Relationship Coach. Visit thepathtosovereignty.com to enter a portal of transformation.
How to create authentic connection in relationships is the topic of today's Soul Sovereignty podcast with myself, Jessica Falcon, and a special guest today, Guy Senstock. And he is the founder of the Circling Institute's, the original circling approach since 1998, which, if you have not heard of circling before, is basically a way of coming together to teach people how to be present, to connect, to listen, to relate in a way that is authentic, that is, I think, creates more intimacy and allows people to be truly seen and heard, because we're not taught how to relate. We're taught math skills and science skills and history. And even though all of that is really built on relationships, we're not taught how to relate with ourselves, how to relate with another in a way that brings our insides to the outside so we can truly be seen for who we are, not just knowledge we have. Like 2 + 2 = 4. Yay, that's very different than I'm having an internal experience and being witnessed in that. And so one of the reasons I wanted to have Guy on the podcast is because I have done a lot of circling myself and took a facilitator training with Seek Healing, which uses authentic relating and circling modalities to help people. And I found that it deepened my capacity to hear and see other people's experience without making it my own or without taking any of it personally. Because what often happens is when we're not learning how to relate deeply with ourselves, our own emotions, then, and I see this a lot in my clients in relationship, somebody says something like, I'm upset about XYZ. And the other person's like, but I didn't do XYZ. And the person's like, I didn't say you did XYZ. I'm just telling you how I feel about XYZ. And then, but you said you didn't like, and and then it gets into this anything but connection. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. The arms race and then nuclear, all of that, right?
And then you, and then, sure, we could say it's just the ego that takes everything personally. And that's true. And also to develop the capacity and the tools. So it's really great to have you here to have the conversation.
Really great to be here. It's been, we've been talking for a little bit beforehand and just getting to know you a bit, right? And what shines forth from you. I just appreciate how much you've cleared the glass to become transparent to, essentially all the things that I'm imagining this podcast actually shines. So thank you for that. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for witnessing that and seeing that. And that's something right there. Just the ability to witness another person and see that creates so much intimacy and depth and relationship. And that capacity to see, I would love for us to start talking about that. I've done a few episodes before on what it is to be seen in a relationship. So many people, men and women, feel invisible. They feel unseen. They feel, even if they're next to a person, I was just talking about this on another podcast episode, they can feel lonely because the connection isn't from an emotional space. It's not depth. So let's talk a little bit more about how do we create that capacity and what are the tips and tools that you have in the Circling Institute that help people develop that, because it's a real skill set.
Yeah, totally. What's interesting is before we were meeting, I realized you had some things on YouTube, and I just listened to you. So I was like, oh, let me check out some of your things, and which is great. And I was sitting down with my wife, and I just saw next to it, like the next thing to be played was a documentary about Johnny Depp, and that it was called the Relationship from Hell. And I was like, should I? Oh, I just clicked it, and we were watching, like, as everyone watched, right, the absolute craziness, right, of that relationship. And it was funny, like, all I kept hearing was like from her was like she'd poop on his side of the bed and all the crazy stuff, and I just kept hearing, oh, like bids for connection. It's like I just kept hearing. I was like, "Oh,
do you see me yet? Do you see me yet? Do you really see me yet?
Let me just tear down your reputation," right? And all I could see from him is like, "I so want to connect with you. Please allow it to be safe." Like, it was interesting to watch that, but it was also interesting to kind of like, because at some level, just with all of the circling and the authentic relating, it's really attuned me to that, right? And I think that kind of gets at a little bit of what seeing another is, right? It's a seeing that doesn't just see what's in front of you, but it sees through to what's deeper, right? And oftentimes, right, especially when we're like mad and don't know it and defended and, as or egos are clutched or something like that, like it can be really difficult to see that, but like you can actually train yourself, right, to feel like see through that and speak to the depth of the matter. And I think when that happens are those moments when people say this really interesting thing that I started hearing from the very beginning is people kept saying this experience of like, oh my God, I've never been felt so seen before. And that caught my attention from the beginning. I'm like, what is it to be seen? Right? Like, what is that like, and it seemed and what I heard in that statement, right, was something like this. It was like, I didn't even know that that's what I always wanted until it happened. And then I realized that I've been kind of looking for that my whole life. It's got this, there's something so primal about being a human and being seen and seeing, right? That feels like deeply human to me.
Yeah.
And in some sense, I think this is what we're talking about, right? In some ways, is like when you can, there's the vulnerability of sharing, but then there's the vulnerability of being porous enough to the deeper things being communicated that aren't necessarily said, but you can hear. And if you can hear them, then you can respond to them, right? And it's something like, even if the person is just, saying crazy things and then, but you can actually hear like a plead, right? Right. And maybe it's coming out with a kind of desperation, but you hear through the desperation to the being, right? That is pleading, right, for connection or wants connection, let's say, right? And if you could hear that, you can then respond to it. And in responding to it, it can oftentimes invite that very level up to the surface. And then we're in a deeper connection. So I think what you're talking about, like this seeing, this like kind of a full body listening, is I think the anonymous one, right, at the bottom of deep connection is like, it's not exactly about sharing, right, or saying, or what I say or what I don't say. I think it's really grounded in a kind of listening, right?
And
That
sensing.
Yeah, sensing, listening. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a bodily.
Mhm.
It's very, and one level it's so simple, but it's so simple it's just profound.
Mhm. Mhm. I feel when I think about being truly seen or truly seeing, I I tend to phrase it in the terms of seeing through the lens of my heart.
Yeah.
not seeing through the lens of my mind.
Yeah.
And when we're wanting to be seen, when we're seeing another, to truly be seen isn't being seen because of what you've done and achieved and produced and possessed and like, it's just that who you actually are, your unique essence, to be seen for who you authentically are. And I know for me growing up, that was very clearly my greatest wound, of not feeling seen, of feeling invisible.
Yeah.
And I remember, so growing up, I was, you could say, overweight, and so people would make fun of me for my weight. And I remember I was severely bullied throughout the years growing up. And I remember having so many moments of like, just, why don't you see me? Like, me, who I am. Why can't anyone see me? Because I was always able to see souls. I don't know what it's like to not see a soul. And it just felt, it was the most painful thing to feel so unseen. And I have spoken with clients, men too, but especially women around the world, that just constantly feel invisible for who they actually are on the inside. And yet at the same time, this is where the circling comes in, and these kinds of communication tools and authentic practices, is that even if we really want to be seen, men and women, well, you can't really be seen until you use your voice. You can't really be seen until you know your insides and you're able to bring them out through your voice or through your expression.
Yeah.
And that's where people get stuck, because they feel invisible, but then they're not in touch or able to bring it out or express it in a way that is received and heard.
Yep.
And I know there's a lot of different ways we can go with this, but
yeah, totally. I like that. I like that word you use.
Right. This word, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're not watching the YouTube video, we're just kind of making shapes with the hands. And that's part of it though, right? Is that we are communicating through the body all the time, through the breath, through the tone of our voice. And if we're not sensing all of that, somebody could say something that it sounds really hurtful and angry. Underneath is a lot of grief and pain. And which one are we picking up on? Which one are we responding to? Are we willing to go there? Or do we just brush over it and say, whoop?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that one of the things I've come to appreciate about the practice of circling is just that, being able to practice it. You know, it's something really, it's strange to me when you really kind of think about it. You know, I was recently around, a friend of mine recently just gave birth, and I had met her baby for the first time. She was like, I think she was under a month. You know, she's baby, right? And I was like looking at, just barely formed, right? Just almost able to like lock in with their eyes, right? And I was just sensing this, God, wow, like how we all start. Right. It's almost like I felt like I was holding the most vulnerable thing in the universe.
And they are.
Yeah, I think they are actually.
They are.
I don't know. I don't know if there's anything more vulnerable than a human infant, right? And it's striking because when you think about, that's how we all start, right? This vulnerability, this absolute dependency, right? There's no being able to take care of ourselves, being wholly reliant on the relationships to hold us, right? We all start off that way, but if we ask ourselves, like, who are the ones that are contemplating, like, what's on the other side of the black hole, right? Who are the ones that are like, you know, maybe for the first time, maybe we're the occasion where the Big Bang said I for the first time, right? Like, and it strikes me that there's something very connected, right, in a mysterious way, right, between this central vulnerability and our ability, right, to be amazing and terrible and all the ways that human beings are. And it strikes me that this little infant, this little human being, at some point, right, will develop and become a person. And having had, so I have a 23-year-old, I'm 52, or no, am I 52? I'm 53. Yeah, I think I'm 53 now. Um, the length of my youth keeps stretching, goes on for a long time.
Love it when we're like, wait, where am I? What am I?
Yeah.
What age am I?
Yeah, totally. It's kind of like, so be really having, and I have a 4-year-old. So at this age, right, really seeing at a I think a much deeper level, like what is actually happening, right? How a little baby becomes a person. It strikes me, man, it's in and through other people. Like we actually, this vulnerability, right, starts to emerge as the person that they are totally, if not completely, in and through the relationship with his mother, right? The relationship with me, with grandma, the people around him. Like, so by the time his little brain is able to kind of like fold back on itself and say, I, what he touches is a complete donation of all of his intersubjective relations that he's been swimming in. And I think this way of how we become people in and through people, right? This relationality is not something, I'm saying this because I don't think it's something that I'm a person and then I meet another person and then we take an action and come to relationship, right? And then a relationship happens. What I think I'm getting at is like, no, we're a relationship all the way down,
All the
right?
way. Yeah.
All the way down, right? So being deeply connected, right, is not optional for us. So if we don't have that deep connection, we get really sick, right? We stop being ourselves, right? In some strange way. And I would imagine that you can see this because, you know, what is the ultimate punishment, right? That I even think is more severe than death is being in isolation. We put you in a room, right? And take away all your relationships. And basically what happens is people disintegrate in that.
And I believe there have been studies that show that to be ignored is more harmful to the psyche than to be abused.
Yeah, totally.
Because at least you feel like someone acknowledges your presence. Like at least you feel, and which is why in really unhealthy or abusive relationships, people use the cold, silent treatment.
Yeah.
Because then it creates even more of a need to get their attention, to have their attention, just to feel alive, because the pain of feeling completely invisible and ignored is so deep. Because we're wired for connection. We are, despite the fact that we tend to think we live in our own individual houses or behind computer screens and in our own cars and our own life, we are a part of a greater web of life that exists within and beyond all things. And we cannot be separate from that. And I think that, not to go too much down this lane because we have so many other things I want us to cover, but one of the things that happened during the pandemic that I think was really helpful is everybody realized we're all breathing the same air and we can't not breathe the same air. We're all affecting each other, whether we like it or not, whether we think we're in our own little boxes or not. We all breathe the same air. We all live on the same planet. We all walk the same earth. We all look at the same moon. We look at the same sun. We cannot not be connected. And that relationality of our existence is what you're pointing to. And when we start to recognize that, everything shifts. And because we live in such a hyper individual, I can do it, I don't need help, I'm supposed to know it all. If I don't know it all, something's wrong with me. That vulnerability piece can feel excruciating for people. One, to even know what you want, to know how you feel, to know your own inner experience. Two, to bring it out, to use your voice. Sounds simple, just say it. Not so simple for a lot of people I work with. And then for it to actually be heard, because then when I also hear is, well, I said that, and then this is how they responded, or they shut it down, or then they just got angry. And then there's the fear of conflict, and then there's the avoidance, and then there's, right, the list goes on.
Yeah.
And so to actually connect vulnerably, I would say requires a lot of internal safety, internal resourcing, but also in connection, it still requires the other person to create safety for you too. So let's talk about what's coming up for you as I say this.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. This is so rich with paradox. I wouldn't say contradiction, right? I'd say there's something so paradoxical, right? It's like if I get isolated on some level, I lose something that I am. That's a strange thing to say, right? I lose myself, right? When I'm not around. What did I just say, right? Because we're talking about something that actually is between things, right? This betweenness, and when we lose contact with that, we just get we get crazy, right? We get really nutty and have kind of symptoms for it. I mean, that documentary was on one level, it's like people tuned into that and they went how could they? But really they're seeing themselves, right? Like they're seeing in their own way, they've just been crazy in a relationship, or all the different stuff, because it shows how primary it is, right? It shows how primordial it is, and how crazy it can get when it becomes inaccessible or we can't have it, right? It gets down to our very survival. So vulnerability is the key. And it's interesting because I like to draw the distinction between when we use the term I'm vulnerable, right? Versus another thing that I think oftentimes is collapsed with it, which is the experience of being exposed, right? And I think, I can't, by the way, I've probably worked with like tens of thousands of people at this point, right? In a very intimate, personal way. And I don't think I've ever experienced like kind of tapping them on the shoulder and go like, hey, Bob or Jill, like probably maybe want to try being vulnerable here. I've never, ever heard anyone go, oh yeah, I was just holding it back. Thank God I get to be vulnerable, right? It's never that response. It's always like you're quaking in your boots, right? But I think vulnerability has a sense of volition to it. It's a opening oneself up to the other that involves courage. And exposure would be something like, right? It'd be something like, you're in grade school and then you're playing and then all of a sudden somebody just pulls your pants down, right? And everyone stops and turns and laughs, right? And there you are swinging, your private parts are just exposed to the world. And you can imagine, 20 years of therapy after that, right? Lots of money, right, to deal with that. However, if you think about it this way, it's kind of funny to think about this. However, if say your friends go like, I dare you to just go and pull your pants down, right, in front of everybody, and you kind of walk up there and you do it, and everyone does the exact same thing, but you did it voluntarily, you're probably going to walk away and kind of be proud of yourself.
A little sense of empowerment, right? Like,
yeah.
I did that. Like, look at me. Yeah.
Yes, totally. Totally. And I think that's when we're talking about being vulnerable, we're really talking about that sense of voluntarily being open to something that can be beyond what I'm afraid of, right? And that turning towards the other seem to involve all moments of deepening intimacy in a relationship. It seems, I can't imagine intimacy without vulnerability.
And, not possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny because if the other, I often hear, but what if the other person doesn't respond? It's interesting. I think about that. My experience of that is there's something that I communicate with myself when I really open up in a profound way that even if I'm rejected, there's something I communicate about my relationship with reality that is very redeeming, right? Because it's because that's the kind of strange thing about intimacy, because it's a lot of things, but one thing I don't think it is safe, right? Like moments of intimacy, really what make them moments of intimacy are these moments where we actually go outside of we break into new territory together.
Yes, but
And
I will say that in order to truly do that, there generally has to be enough of a heart connection or a
yeah,
feeling of love. And
yeah,
to me, that love creates a sense of safety.
totally. And it's the reason why you would even bother
Right.
being uncomfortable and tolerating the
Mhm.
anxiety of being honest about what you
Yeah.
want or what's there, right? It's like it already reveals of something that you deeply value enough to bother doing that, right?
Mhm.
Now, I do think moments of intimacy actually develop a profound sense of safety between two people, right?
Yeah.
A
Mhm.
profound sense of safety. The thing about it, though, is, and we were talking about this earlier, because it took me a long time to really understand what was the deal with circling, and it was something like this. I'm like within about 10 years, it was like all over the world, and I was like, it seemed to me, despite the personalities involved, and myself included, right? It felt like, I mean, what is going on with this thing? And I tried to understand, I was trying to make sense out of it always by looking at, is it the methodology? And then at some point, it started to dawn on me that something really incredible happened, right? Right at about the time that circling happened, which was in the Bay Area at the late 90s, which was right where that puts us right at the beginning of the whole internet movement, right? The whole .com thing that happened. And I think one of the things that technology really did, right, is it really made two-way synchronistic communication, right? Like, so before kind of the internet, like if we had to exchange information, we at least had to talk on the phone. Right, we had radio and television, we had one-way communication, but if you actually had to do the exchange of information, it was always coupled with relation, right? And it's funny because you think about on one level, relationships can be very normative, but this always has this possibility that they can break into new territory, right? You could say something that I misunderstand that can hurt my feelings so bad that I end up in therapy for 20 years, right? It's like, or you could say something that I misunderstand that like brings me into Buddhahood, right? Like, the range of possibilities that can happen when two people meet are kind of infinite, right? And that's another, you look at that's another word for terrifying, right? So it's not like I don't want to fluff up and make too fuzzy, relationality, because other people have always been terrifying.
Yeah.
However, I think when technology afforded things like the answering machine, and then things like texting, and then email, and then social media, where all of a sudden, right, we could exchange information uncoupled from the live, coordinated, awkward thing with all this potential for good and bad, right, called relationality. And that uncoupling, and because our nervous systems will just go towards the easier thing, right? I think we end up where we are today, right? Which is, I've been doing some research in this, trying to make sense of some of these things. And I was looking at how many, like, I wanted to see through time the amount of time on average an individual spent in relationship, right, through the years. And I was able to go back as far, like, get an estimate as far back as 1840. And so in 1840, right, the average person spent just under 8 hours a day in relation with other people. And then you see this line, it goes down a little bit, and then, television hits, right? And then it kind of goes down like this. Um, and then the internet hits, right? And it goes down like this, and then the phone, and it goes way down, and then COVID, like it almost turns inside out. And and what we see is today, the average 25-year-old spends under 30 minutes a day in relationship.
Oh, heartbreaking.
Right?
Oh,
yeah.
God.
Totally.
And they might say they're in a lot of relationships.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. In fact, they have millions of friends.
Yeah.
In fact, they may even be famous, right? Like, it's such a... So, the initial reading on that is you could say, like, well, the person in 1840 is a self that is just less lonely than the person in 2026. However, if you think about, wait a minute, how we become a self, right, isn't it through these relationships? I think we're talking about something much more profound, right, and incredible that I don't even know how to, I'm kind of like, I don't even know how to think about that. However, that's what I started to realize is that, oh yeah, circling, which really formed as this kind of yoga or this way of really honing in on that kind of transformational element in a relationship, right? As an actual practice, like yoga practices or a meditation practices, starts to make sense because I think it was anticipating, right, and connected to in ways that we didn't even understand, to a need that would start to take place, right? And I think if I were to predict that relationality and relationships are going to become what our body had to be, like our relationship to our body had to become after the Industrial Revolution, right? Where, for example, today, everyone walking on the street, right? Like if you ask them, so how's your, are you working out? They'll have a story because they've always thought about it. Like they'll have an excuse. They'll feel flustered about it because it's for everyone. Your health and your fitness, right, is a mode that you have to actually pick up and be concerned about, right? Whereas before, for machines, you had to go to the bathroom, you had to dig a hole, right? Like life involved was coupled with movement. And so I think something like that is actually going to be happening with relationality, is that like our relationships are going to need to become a domain in which we consciously pick up and are concerned with, right? Whereas before, like at a certain level, like I was swimming in relationships. But now it's like the thing that makes us human is now an option that we can have. So I think circling is expressing the beginnings of that, right? Mm-hmm. Is this thing where like connection is something that you actually really need to tend to. You really need to be in consideration of it. You really need to plan it, to cultivate it, to care about it. Mm-hmm. Well, and that's why I was like, oh, this is probably why this has gone all over the world, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's responding to something that's never been there before, right?
Mm-hmm. 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 They need to learn and understand how to connect in a society mm-hmm. that doesn't foster connection. But yet, what's interesting is when I look at the history of, say, intimate relationship, well, take away the word intimate, romantic relationships, or what we would call with a intimate partner, even though a lot of intimate partners don't experience intimacy, but I might experience physical intimacy, let's say, but that's very different than emotional intimacy. And so when we look at the history of that, those haven't really been relationships where both people feel seen or heard either for a very, we're talking about a few thousand years.
Yes.
And my research shows that maybe 5,000 years ago, people were a lot more seen and heard in relationship than they are today. And part of that is because we haven't been seeing souls. And even with the Industrial Revolution and all of this mechanization of the world, and then we could say the technology of the world, there's again this lack of soul, lack of heart.
Yeah.
Seeing people as machines, seeing people as just bodies, as just physical, as meeting an end, as a means to an end, rather, I should say. And this has been going on for a really long time. And what has happened is that we just keep doing that. And when somebody is triggered or they're upset, and it's like, well, you, instead of seeing who's that person behind that word, who's that soul, and how do we connect? And part of it is, I think the main difference that I'm feeling as I hear you say that, of say like 1840s to now, is that, well, in the 1840s, there was no just clicking offline and walking away from the computer. You still had to be in the same community, maybe on the same farm with that person for the rest of your life, potentially. There was no escaping the person. There was no just Xing out. There was no, well, I'm just gonna bleh, and then I never have to see you or talk to you again, so I can get away with it. And I call that relating. There was none of that, really, because
call that relating.
I call that relating. I mean, a lot of people call relating what I would call really toxic, behavior.
Oh, totally.
So, like this idea on Facebook, right, where it's like, I mean, I'm not a big social media person, but when you see people comment, and it's like this, well, here's my opinion. Well, here's my opinion. And there's no interrelating. There's no, I hear you, I see you. There's a complexity. There's a dimensionality. Like we can agree to disagree and just understand where we are beneath this. That doesn't happen. And so in the 1840s, even though they weren't being taught how to be vulnerable and maybe intimate, they at least had to maintain communication and maintain contact. And so there was a relationality, as in, even if I want to right now, maybe there was a little yelling, maybe in a way it was better. They had better emotional expression in some ways, perhaps, but they still showed up. And you hear stories, at least in historical times, during war, for example, where they would say, all right, let's have a few days of peace. And everybody stops and there's peace. And then, okay, now let's pick back up again. And that even shows a little more human capacity. But then now our capacity to relate is very different. And people take these, well, I could just X you out. I could just close the computer. I could just walk away. I never have to see you again, to intimate relationships too. And if this idea of, well, you said something that made me mad. So, and then, but there's no, let's talk about it. Let me hear you. Let's try to understand each other. I also get mad and I also say things I don't mean. So maybe you did that too. That just the benefit of the doubt, even.
Right. That. Yes. I'd even say this, that, and this, that, this. Yes. You're like, that thing, like that thing over there. Like, what about that? It is. I find that one of the things that really I've come to appreciate about what we kind of consciously practice for hours and hours and hours is doing kind of exercises and practice that are just simply about simply being with another and really starting to perceive what is it that we're actually with when we're with a person. What does that mean? What are we actually beholding when we behold another, right? And I would say, like, the thing that you're describing is whatever that is what that's the this, right? That pregnant mystery, right? Is the this that I'm not even in touch with its possibility when I'm like going, you took my man, and therefore I'm going to say this on TikTok, and then I'm going to make a whole business out of it, and then da 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 da, right? Until someone else does that to me, right? Whatever. I'll even become famous and how much I can say you're bad, right? Um,
Just point the fingers at everybody else. Yeah.
yes. It's and in what you had mentioned, I want to pick on something that you said. It's like, yeah, in some sense, you just becomes a means to my own end, right? And I think that's the thing that is, these exercises, when we really kind of contemplate, like, who are you, right? Like, who am I? You're a person. What does that mean? What am I saying? And what am I beholding when I behold you?
That I just want to highlight that you're a real person. The screen can make it seem fake. Yeah. The grocery store line, they're just doing their job. No, real people. The waitress is a person. The bartender is a person. The one person behind the screen typing is a real soul. I just want to highlight that. A person.
Yeah. Absolutely. Right. And Martin Buber talks about this, right? He has he talks about, he has a book called, I, Thou. And he makes this distinction about between an I, Thou relation and an I, It relation. In his language, he's like, right? He says, all there is relation, right? And we have one of two attitudes, right? We're either in a relation with an I, Thou or an I, It. And he says the way he basically, I mean, I'm summarizing a lot. Buber's, he's hard to categorize. I think that's kind of like the point, but he's kind of a philosopher and a kind of a theologian and a mystic and a bunch of different things, but he's hard to categorize. And he says that, in an I, thou or an I, it relation, I basically am relating to what I'm relating to as a means to my own end, right? Like you are just on the way to the thing that I'm trying to attend to. And he says that, and conversely, an I thou relation, which he says is a much rarer thing, is when that which I am before, right, I see as an end in itself. The end, right, in some way is at the beginning. And he says this one really profound thing that I've been thinking about for years, right? And he says this, he's like, and the I of it and the I of thou is not the same I.
That's so
the I of it and the I of thou is not the same I.
Ugh, chills again.
Yeah. I've come to learn that when you get chills at real things. That's called some deep attunement. Yes. Yep. Yeah. Do you get chills at the chill worthies? Yes.
Right.
You have a deep sense of chill worthiness.
Yes, exactly.
Must be good. Yes. And what I hear in that is it's like something like this. It's not that like I'm an I and there's thous out there and it's out there. He's saying something much more profound. He's saying, no, actually, I and it are spoken as one word. I and thou are spoken as one word. So when I'm with you, and I probably bring this concrete. We probably all had that experience where, we have some encounter and like I walk away mad. And then for 2 weeks, I'm rehearsing arguments with you, and you just become more and more wrong in my head. In fact, all the times that I thought that wasn't true about you, I now realize I was delusional about you. And like, you just rev it up and you finally go and meet and you're like ready to just, lay it in there and on the line or whatever. And you sit down and you look up and here's this face and you're like, oh, you're a person. You like hurt you. And in that moment, you really get this difference, right? Between you're a thou, right? And I think what we feel in that moment where we're like struck and like, oh, and that kind of falls away, or that becomes distinct, that thing that we perceive, right? It's not a thing, right? It's a person. And I think what we hear in that is that, yeah, there's something about you that I cannot sum up. There's something you will always exceed my conception of you. It's another way of saying that, like, who and what you are is something that's inexhaustible. I can
And
never, yeah,
go
I
ahead,
can
finish your
never
sentence.
sum you up. And in fact, you can't even say anything that'll sum you up.
Mm-hmm.
So to really be authentic, right, is at some levels to really be with what's before you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to be with what's before you at the deepest level is this, it's being, right? It's something that will always exceed my apprehension of it. You are that which can never become my own subject. And
Yeah.
that is where relationship happens, right?
Yes.
That's where paradoxically meeting happens, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's something that when we meet at that level, it's so renewing, right? Even if it's hard or it's really emotional, there's something about that connection and that intimacy, right? When we really come into contact with you, right, and together, that meeting sings of something that's so about everything, right? This moreness, right? This surplus, right? And there's something about that connection that reminds me of me. It reminds me of who I am. It reminds me what I see in nature, right? In sunsets, this beauty, this truth, this goodness that precedes me, right? And I think that's one of the things that human beings get when we get what we get through connection, is we not only just get a relationship that I'll have throughout my whole life that I'll deeply value, but in that connecting, I actually see through you into something much greater than both of us. And that's why I think relationships are so tied with the sense of significance and meaning in our life, because it's how we bind, right, to the significance of our being and our being in the world. And so,
If
like a lot
people
of,
can
yeah,
show up that way, though,
yeah,
right? Which is
yeah,
because that is a skill, that is a capacity.
bingo.
Because what I see in a lot of relationships, people that come to me that talk to me about their relationships, or just witness, say, at a restaurant, right, when you're out in public,
Yeah,
is that when, let's say, family member, intimate partner, best friend, they're not showing up. I see thou, with my thou to your thou, my soul to your soul. They're
yeah,
seeing what they're angry about. They're seeing what they haven't done yet. They're seeing that you didn't clean the dishes. They're seeing that you said that thing a week ago that really upset me, that's still in my head, that I haven't let go of. They're not seeing the person, the soul,
yeah,
beyond the story, the wound,
yeah,
the trigger. And we can't actually be in what I would call sacred relationship, conscious relationship, authentic, intimate relationship.
yeah, yeah,
If we're not willing to go beyond the story, to go beyond the trigger, to go beyond the wound, to go beyond the fear, to see beyond that, we have to be willing, we have to develop the capacity to see beyond that thing that our head is
yes,
and
yeah,
otherwise, this is why most people don't feel seen in a relationship, because the partner comes to them with like, but you haven't, instead of curiosity, instead of
yeah,
being inquisitive as to what's going on, or instead of, this is how it's affecting me.
yeah,
This is what's coming up for me. And
yeah,
in an unhealthy relationship, that might happen. And there may be no result from that. And maybe that person will never be able to hear you. And maybe they will never develop that capacity. But in relationships where both people are willing to develop the capacity and willing to see and hear each other, it will be uncomfortable. It's not easy. It's more uncomfortable. But I like to think of it this way. It feels really uncomfortable to speak that deep truth and to be vulnerable and to say to someone like, this is how your behavior is really affecting me. But quite frankly, I found it much more uncomfortable to go to bed at night with the story in my head, the emotion that wasn't processed, feeling horrible next to the person I'm with. I found that way more uncomfortable than saying like, we got to talk about this because it keeps coming up for me.
Yeah.
Way more uncomfortable, because then you're the one in discomfort and you think you're saving the person from discomfort, but then everybody's uncomfortable because the tension is palpable, the resentment is there, the bitterness builds. It doesn't actually help anybody, but we have these stories. And so the stories are what we have to confront. The beliefs are what we have to confront. And I know that a lot of the work that I do is around these beliefs, but they're mostly subconscious. And I'm sure they come up in circling too, of these beliefs that we have, that we've got to confront to actually be able to relate authentically, take it beyond the safety, take it beyond developing the capacity to be present or the capacity to attune to a person or a soul. Take it beyond that to just, and our beliefs about how we're supposed to show up, about what's even cool, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Or what makes somebody attractive or unattractive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone who's listening to this can relate to like precisely to exactly what you're saying, right? And it's so interesting because one of the things I notice, right, is your capacity for intimacy can grow, but intimacy itself, that moment, right, right before you turn towards the other, right, and say, hey, I really need to talk, right, or hey, in an undefended way, right, is like that turn. There's so much going on in that turn, right? There's so much going from like, rehearsing World War III in your head, and you become more and more right. Another person, like whatever, right? Like, while simultaneously being great for saving them from this, right? To turning towards the other. That turn there's something deeply existential in that. And there's something about that I notice, I notice in my relationship with my wife when that turn happens. That's something that actually can't be, it's strange. It's something, it's like, there's something about that you can't actually practice and get good at. It's always a brand new movie. It's always being right at the beginning. Like, there's no amount of like, and I tell you, I've tried, I think I was trying to estimate, like, I think I figured out at some point, this was 12 years ago I think I had done like 10,000 circles. Like, so I've done my practice at it. But I'm just so always struck of like when I'm always like, oh, I'm scared. Don't hurt me. It's like this, there's something about it that's so real, right? And so so real that like I can become great. I've noticed I've grown a deeper capacity to be inclined to do that, to be attracted to it. But in the moment of doing it, like I'm right at the beginning again, right? And so I really appreciate that turn, right? And there's a mystery there, right, that is striking. In fact, I would say probably one of the most intimate moments of my life, right, was when I was with the person that I was with. And there was a lot of love between us. And I realized, and in fact, I was talking to somebody beforehand, and all I could do was like come up with complaints about things, right? And the person said, Guy, it sounds like all that you know for sure right now is you're done. And he said that, and it like went whoop all the way down. And I instantly felt sad, and I felt like strangely open. And I remember telling her that. Now, like, done, I have no idea what happens after that. I don't know if that means literally done, like, who knows? But all I knew is like the deepest truth that I could actually was at the center of what I had access to was like, yeah, I think I'm done. And what was interesting is like I said that and I felt so vulnerable saying that. But in saying that, right, it's like I think what happened is like how important she was to me, how much love I had for her came through that vulnerability. And then that led to a conversation that opened up to dimensions that like led to other rooms that went so outside of my range of what I could see at the time. But that just coming and saying the truth, right, in that vulnerable way led to things that I couldn't foresee, right? I thought about that like so much, right? There's something so telling about what that is, right? That moment of vulnerability, even when the content of it is like an ending, like in that moment, it became a beginning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Truth was on the table because there
Yeah.
was something you were done with, even if it wasn't the relationship, it was a pattern, it was an
Yeah.
experience, it was a cycle, it was something. And to be able to voice that with the awareness of what that means and what that brings and what that is. And it's these things that we're so afraid to voice to ourselves, much less to another person, that can bring us the most freedom. Because there's always something beneath that. There's always some fear, some belief, some soul cord contract or karma or something. There's something, right, that has to be healed underneath that has to be seen, that has to be touched for the energy itself. We get to the root so the energy can transform and transmute and turn into something new. And that happens through truth telling. That happens through, but I will say, and I also just realized the time, and oh my goodness, we have to start to wrap this up soon.
Oh, we're running out of timelessness?
It's like we're running out of timelessness. We could just keep going and going. The paradox, the great paradox of like, there is no time, and yet we have time.
Right.
But the truth-telling piece, part of the, I know this is part of circling, is that it's not just truth-telling. It's the way in which you speak the truth. Mm-hmm. It's how you say it, because there's a lot out there in the world about just speak your truth, like from this microphone, and you've got this, and then there's anger, and there's this, and there's that, but that's not actually truth speaking. Truth speaking comes from the heart. Yeah, and it's
unarguable.
Yes, it's right. It's an experience that's being shared. It's not and you have to agree and you have to see it this way, or if you don't agree with my truth, something's wrong with you. It's not an argument. It's not a defense. It's not a war. Yes. Truth is not, I would say truth doesn't actually create wars, but so it's really, it's this capacity to tune into what is the truth, but then to filter it, I would say, through the heart. Though I know you have your own languaging, so that it is held in that space and seen in that space and received in that space.
Absolutely.
That both people can drop into and feel and attune to and get curious about. I know explore is one of your stages of circling, right? That curiosity, what is here? And so what is your truth? And what is my truth? And how do our truths play together and dance together? And are these truths compatible long-term? Or are these truths us dancing right here? And maybe the truth is that it takes us in different directions. But the only way we even know is to bring the truths together into the dance to begin with.
Totally. I think what you're keying in on is what we talk about in circling is the first stage, or I'd say facet of circling, is the sovereignty, right? And you know, it's interesting because people usually think about sovereignty, that what comes to mind is like independence or an individual or something like that. But if you think about it a little bit longer, you realize like, oh, actually, the borders around me actually allow me to relate with what's at the border. There's something about my own personness, right? And the language of sovereignty is the language of self-disclosure, right? And I think about it like this is like one of the, we have three agreements before all of our events, or principles that we have everyone agree to practice to. And one of them, right, is really speaks to sovereignty, is that when you share with the other, share with the conscious intention to relate. And
Love that.
to bring that more into relief, it's like helpful to talk about maybe what wouldn't be that. And I think the opposite attention of that is when I share with the often unconscious intention to control. Right? So when I share to control, I'm kind of using speech like a hand, right? I'm kind of like saying what I'm saying in the way that I'm saying it, or I'm not saying what I'm not saying it in the way that I'm not saying it, so as to ensure a particular outcome. And oftentimes this has to do with ensuring that you love me, ensuring that you accept me, ensuring me that like you see me as right, or whatever the thing is, right? However, when we speak sovereign, speaking in the language we kind of talk about is like when you're really sovereign, you're really sharing with the intention to relate, which is the language of self-disclosure. And the only thing that I can, as far as I can tell, that's really the source of what is most innermost to you is the language of experience, right? So when I own, in a certain sense, my own experience, right? What I'm really doing is I'm speaking something that's inarguable, right? Like it's kind of like you can't really say, it's like if I say, yeah, I felt really sad. Someone
You
can't
don't.
really
No,
say,
you
no, you
don't.
didn't, right? It kind of, I mean, you can, and I've said it, and other people have said it to me, right? They've meant it, but like in reality, if you think about it, it's like actually, no, that you are like it's the one thing in the world that's unarguable, right? And so when you kind of come from the intention to relate, what's interesting about that, and we all can know this, right? Because when we feel like when we say something like, okay, I'm going to be really honest, right? Instantly, probably just hearing me say it, everyone got a little bit more alive, right?
Yeah. What?
That
Gonna come
aliveness
next.
really is revealing of what that it really admits that when I get done saying what I'm saying, I have no idea what's going to happen next. It's real, right? It's real. And so being deeply sovereign, right, is almost it presupposes our capacity to meet the other, right? This, and I've basically been hearing you really make this distinction of like, how do I turn towards the other, even if it hurts, right? Even if I have all these judgments for you, how can I do that in such a way that can actually communicate something real and afford the possibility of connection, right? And that's where this is the real practice element of really learning the language, right, of self-disclosure. And the thing I always like how I've kind of narrowed it down is like the basic fundamental building blocks of that are in-housed in saying what I noticed, what I imagined, what I felt, and what I want, right? I'm noticing,
Noticed,
yeah,
felt,
I know
imagined, and
I'm
wanted.
noticing when you said X, Y, and Z, I felt defensive and scared and sad underneath that. And I'm imagining that you don't like me. And what I'm really wanting is for you to like me, right? In some sense, it's like just that language is something like the structure that can guide you into that deeper place. Right when I just said that, it's funny. I was talking to somebody imaginary. Now it kind of felt like, oh yeah, like I felt revealed.
Right.
And it's funny because at the beginning of the events, when we go over these agreements, somebody who's never done it before, they're like, they nod their head and they're like, yeah, I agree to do that. Right. Because they're thinking like, yeah, I understand what you mean. Like, I'll just be with what is and I'll just share myself. And then oftentimes, right, they go into actually circle and they open their mouth and they realize all they've ever done is give advice, or all they've ever done is make assessments. All they've ever done, like, and there's a humbling recognition there of that actually self-disclosure, right, is really a thing that we don't do a lot, right, when we speak. So just that, just being able to name, right, in the language of experience, right, affords this possibility of connection. And that's something that you can actually practice. And that's something that you can actually hone in on and get really, really good at. Now, at the bottom of it, though, right, and I've seen this a lot, right, over the years in myself and in everybody, the intention part, right, is where the real yoga comes in. Because I can like actually do all of the language just perfectly, and still underneath it, I want to control. I want you to get something, or I want to manipulate in some way. So at the bottom of it, there's a very deeply human choice, right? And encounter one gets to have with oneself, right? Around that. And you know what's interesting is like even that you can say, yeah, I'm noticing, right? Some part of me just wants to just get this over with and just say all the right things so that I can get out of here, right?
I'm noticing that I want to say this in a way that feels controlling because I'm really afraid that if I don't, that you're going to do something that's going to hurt me or leave and just speaking that out loud. And the truth is that somebody might leave and somebody might reject you and somebody might not like you. And part of sovereignty is developing enough inner resourcing and inner safety that you still belong to you and you still love you and you still accept you, so that even if or when that happens, that you don't take it in and make it yours, because there are enough boundaries, energetic and emotional and mental, that what somebody else's experiences stays their experience. What your experience is stays your experience. And yes, they share and they dance, but it doesn't mean you take them in and make them yours.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because sovereignty is also choice. And the choice is, I am in choice and therefore choosing to express my inner experience to you. But if I'm trying to control you, then I'm not recognizing your choice. I'm not recognizing your sovereignty.
Yes.
And that's not sovereign. To do that to another, right? So there's this idea, this ancient kingship and queenship, was that the person as the king or queen would rule for and on behalf of all people, that they were that authority figure, but it was for the benefit of all. And then we, through military and all sorts of things over many thousands of years and lots of belief system shifts, then we created this idea that, well, when you're king, for example, even though there aren't that many technically in the world right now, that when you have that it's, well, no, I decide for you. But the truth is, you can point all day long to governments that do that how are you doing that in your own life? Because I will tell you, just going into a train or an event, you hear people trying to control people all the time. And tell you, and I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to tell you. And all you have to do is open up social media. Everybody's telling. I say to my clients, I will never tell you what to do. I will help you discover your own truth. I will help you, guide you. But to tell somebody, right, to decide for another is the opposite of sovereignty. And so what that real authentic connection is opposite of control. And control is rooted in fear. And so it's having those. That's why I love that you also put, when I saw that you put sovereignty as your first primary, I was like, this is in sync, because of course sovereignty is what I do teach.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
and so it's
you bleed of it. Yes.
It's like my and it's
inexhaustible
really
fount of sovereignty.
And I'm so passionate about it, because if we were all sovereign, that's freedom, right? And it's freedom in relationship. Because if we're not sovereign, we cannot experience freedom in relationship. It's just not possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Anywhere sovereignty is, anywhere where I'm either kind of maybe collapsed and merging, right? Or anywhere where I'm kind of, guarded, right? Or separate. Like sovereignty is where sovereignty is lost, but it's also where relationship is immediately lost, right? If I merge with you, right? Like I don't really have a relationship with you. If I'm guarded against you or postured against you, I don't have a relationship with you. Sovereignty is this sweet spot, right? In between. Yeah. And there's something, it's it's more like where wisdom is, right?
Yes.
Like, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and the courage to change the things I can. And then the most difficult part, the wisdom to know the difference. There's something about wisdom and sovereignty that seem to be this forever tuning into, right? And finding it. Yeah.
There's a whole actually ancient connection between sovereignty and wisdom, and around the serpents. I like to say that so the serpent, from an ancient perspective, represents wisdom, and to be sovereign is to take of that despite the consequences, the perceived consequences. And there's a lot more I could say about that story, but for the sake of time, to be tuned maybe for another, because I'd love for people to hear about if they want to get involved in circling, or how they can find you. And I know you have a free gift, and any parting words, because I would love for people to be able to partake in what you offer and actually practice.
Yeah, everything that we've been talking about, right, is learnable. It's practice. It's innate, right? So I just want to say that's like, it's everything that we've been talking about is something that can be embodied. It can be practiced. You can become better at, right? And in becoming better, right, at the skills, you can only do so by deepening the internal capacity for that. So they're really two in the same thing, right? This becoming a better, more sovereign vocabulary, right, really draws on, right, a depth of the capacity to be sovereign inside of ourselves, right? So they're really like to take up relation and to really value it, care about it, tend to it, right, is, given the world is a network of relations, it's like it's kind of a no-brainer, right? If you want to become good at something, it seems like that's probably the thing to get really good at, right? Is the capacity to relate, and it's especially nowadays. So what I have the Circling Institute, right, is my company. I own it with Karenna and John, and we have all kinds of like live courses, but the thing that's cool is that actually honing the skill has actually become more accessible than it's ever been before, because we've actually created some self-study programs, right? So like if you wanted to right now, and they're pretty inexpensive, like you can just go to the website and there's like 3 basic courses that cover like the pre-stage of the 7 stages of circling, and the first 2 stages. We have 2 courses that go dive deep into the skills, so you can just actually do that at your own pace. And then it really emphasizes the practice of it, integrating it in your life. And so we really break it down and like isolate certain parts so you can really kind of like hone in and understand it, but in a lived way, right? And that's what I would say would be the most quickest way, just to jump right in, would be to check out those self-study programs. And then at the Institute, we have everything from drop-in live events on Zoom. We have a lot of things on Zoom, and we have some things in person in the Bay Area. But we have a live event every Thursday at 7. It's open to everybody, or 6 p.m. Pacific time till 9 p.m. We've been doing that every Thursday for 15 years. And then we have intensive weekends, which is a deeper dive. If you really want to get to know circling and really get a sense of okay, this is what this is, right? Come to a weekend. And then if you really speaks to you, we have, and this is mostly what I spend most of my time doing now, which is like in practitioner trainings. We have like a year-long deep dive, right, into you form into the same cohort and you just dwell deep and really take this as learn this as an art. And that's we have this next one we have coming up. I think it starts in mid-October, and we have multiple levels above that. But that's basically the gist of it. circlinginstitute.com is the name of it. I'll give you all the links for that you can put on the show notes if you want to check that out. And so if you want to just do something on your own and just really study it and practice it right with the people around you, you can just dive right in today. And if you want to participate and I still lead most of the courses. So I'm always there, and John, either me or John or Karen is always there to participate in the practice. And also we've been doing weekends and some drop-in events in the Bay Area. So if you're in the Bay Area, and we can do it in 3D.
in real human form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you want to contact me, I work with people one-on-one and stuff like that. I've been doing that for years. So you can contact me at guysenstock@gmail.com.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll put all the links below in the show notes. And it's been such a great conversation. I've enjoyed
it's been so much fun.
The deep diving and
yeah. Yeah, I feel like I'm looking right at the heart of nature.
Yeah. Well, that's been quite a journey too. I mean, nature and sovereignty, nature, wisdom, and sovereignty. It's like a
yeah, we could talk for 2 weeks straight about that.
Exactly. That's why I'm like, we won't go there right now.
Yeah.
It will be another 2 hours at least. Yeah. So thank you. It's been great. And maybe another time. So.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to.
Yeah. Be fun to continue the conversation.
In fact, a couple hours if you're free. I'll see you at 3 o'clock.
Right. Wisdom, nature, sovereignty, and more. Well, thank you all. And if you have any questions, comments, feel free to put it below. You can share this, follow, subscribe if you don't want to miss an episode, and we'll see you next time.